Eli had always dreamed of exploring the stars. As a young child, he would gaze up at the sky, imagining what lay beyond the twinkling lights. Now, as an adult, he was living that dream. He was on a mission to explore uncharted worlds, studying planets no human had ever seen. But nothing could have prepared him for the strange, desolate world he now found himself on. The planet Zeltra 5 was cold and lifeless. There were no trees, no animals, only rock and dust. The sky was a constant, gray, filled with swirling clouds. Eli's ship had crashed here after a freak storm. He had no idea how to fix the ship, and there was no way to contact anyone. For now, he was stuck. He had been wandering the barren land for days, searching for anything useful. Food was scarce, and the oxygen levels were low. He had a small supply of water, but he knew it wouldn't last long. His only option was to keep searching for a way to survive. As Eli trudged through the dust, his boots crunching on the dry ground, he felt the weight of his loneliness. He missed his family, his friends, and the feeling of being connected to something bigger than himself. But here, on this forsaken planet, he felt completely alone. That was when he saw her at first. It was just a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye, stopped in his tracks, squinting into the distance. There, standing on a rocky outcrop, was a figure. It was tall, with glowing red eyes, and a shape that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. For a moment, Eli thought, he was imagining things. But then the figure turned, and he saw her clearly. She was like nothing he had ever seen before. Her skin was a pale, almost glowing shade of blue, and her features were sharp, too sharp. She had long, flowing hair that seemed to float around her as if it wasn't entirely attached to her body. And her eyes, those eyes were the color of blood, glowing with an intensity that sent a chill down Eli's spine. Eli froze. His heart raced and his mind screamed at him to run. But something inside him, the same curiosity that had always driven him to explore the unknown, kept him rooted to the spot. The figure did not move toward him, nor did she run away. Just stood there, watching him with an intensity that was almost palpable. Without thinking, Lee smiled. It wasn't a smile of fear, but of fascination. He didn't know what to expect, but he had always believed that fear was a choice. In this moment, he chose to believe that the creature before him wasn't a threat, but something worth understanding. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a brief second, Eli thought he saw something. Was it surprise? Or maybe confusion? He couldn't be sure. The silence between them stretched on for what felt like hours. But in reality, it was only a few moments. Finally, the creature spoke, her voice low and soft but carrying a sharpness that seemed to pierce the air. "Why? Are you smiling at me, human?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, though Eli couldn't tell if it was from fear or something else. "I'm a monster, not your mate." Her words cut through Eli like a blade, but he didn't flinch. He had heard the legends of monstrous creatures in the far reaches of space, of beings that could destroy entire fleets with a single glance. But none of that mattered to him now. He'd been alone for far too long, and the idea of a connection even with a creature like her was too tempting to resist. "I don't think you're a monster," Eli said, his voice calm, steady. "I think you're something amazing." The creature flinched, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "You're a fool," she hissed, her voice rising with a hint of anger. "You think you can just smile at me, like I'm some harmless thing? You don't know what I am. You don't know what I've done." Eli didn't move. He didn't need to speak anymore. His expression said everything. He had seen pain in the eyes of every living being he had ever met, and it didn't scare him. He could see it know beneath the cold exterior. Beneath the glowing red eyes, he saw fear. "Maybe," Eli said softly, "but that doesn't mean I have to treat you like a monster." The alien creature seemed to struggle with her emotions. Eli could see it in the way she shifted her weight, the way her fists clenched. She looked at him as if he were a puzzle she couldn't solve, a question she couldn't answer. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered. "Why are you so calm?" "I don't know," Eli admitted. Maybe because I'm tired of being afraid. I've been alone for so long, and I don't know. You're the first living thing I've seen in days. I'm just trying to understand." Creature's gaze softened, just a little. But she quickly regained her composure, her cold demeanor returning. "You don't understand," she said, her voice a little quieter now. "You couldn't. I'm not what you think I am. I don't care what you think I think you are," Eli said, his voice gentle. "I just want to know you." For a moment the creature looked at him, her red eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. When she found none, she turned her head away, staring out across the empty landscape. "I've been alone for so long," she whispered. "I've forgotten what it's like to not be afraid." Eli took a step closer, but he didn't reach out to touch her. He didn't want to make her feel threatened. Instead, he simply stood beside her, offering his silent presence. "I'm not afraid," he said again. And in that quiet moment, something passed between them, something neither of them could explain. The following days on Sci-Fi felt like a strange blur. Eli had never imagined his journey would lead him to a world like this, filled with silence and vast empty landscapes. But what troubled him more was Lyra. After their first meeting, she disappeared into the shadows, leaving only questions and a sense of unease in her wake. But that didn't stop Eli. He couldn't ignore the feeling that something in her was different from all the other beings he had encountered in his life. She wasn't a monster, at least not in the way he understood it. Despite her warning, he couldn't shake the thought of her. Every time he went back to his small shelter on the broken-down ship, he couldn't stop thinking about her glowing red eyes, the soft words she had whispered, and the confusion that flickered in her expression. His thoughts often wandered back to the moment they shared by the rocks. When he smiled at her, he had seen something, perhaps not kindness, but a crack in her cold exterior. That moment haunted him. He wanted to understand her. But Lyra was elusive, always just out of reach. She appeared for brief moments, watching him from a distance, never close enough to speak again. One evening, as the pale light of a distant star filtered through the thick clouds above, Eli ventured further into the desolate terrain. He had no real destination, he just needed to get out, to move, to shake the restless feeling in his chest. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, low and almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "Human," it called. Eli spun around, heart racing. There, standing at the edge of a jagged rock formation, was Lyra. She was watching him again, her glowing eyes shimmering even in the dim light. The air between them seemed to crackle, heavy with unspoken tension. He didn't hesitate. He took a step forward, his boots crunching on the rocky ground beneath him. "I thought I might find you here," Eli said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her sharp features softening in the fading light. "Keep following me?" Her tone wasn't harsh, but there was an underlying uncertainty in her voice, a question she didn't know how to ask. "I'm not following you," Eli replied, stopping a few feet away. "I'm just trying to understand. Why do you hide? Why stay in the shadows?" Lyra's eyes flickered to the ground, and for a moment she seemed lost in thought. "I am not like you," she muttered. "I'm not like the others, you know. I am something else." Eli stepped closer, cautiously, but there was no fear in his heart, only curiosity. "I don't understand. You're not a monster, Lyra. You're just different, and I want to know why." Her gaze shot up, her eyes filled with an emotion. "Eli. Couldn't place different?" she repeated. "You think I'm just different? Do you have any idea what I've been through?" Her voice trembled for a moment, but she quickly regained control. "I've been cast out by my own kind, forced to wander this planet alone for years. I am what they made me, a weapon, a mistake. I was created to be something terrible." Eli's expression softened. "You didn't choose that. Whatever they did to you, it's not your fault." Lyra let out a bitter laugh, the sound echoing in the still air. "You think so? You think I can just forget the things I've done? The destruction I've caused?" "You're not a monster because of your past," Eli said, his voice firm. "You're just a person, Lyra. We all have a past, but it doesn't define who we are now. You're not defined by what others have done to you. Lyra stared at him, her lips parting as though to speak, but she stopped herself. There was a long silence between them, neither of them moving. For a moment, Eli thought she might turn away again, but instead, she took a cautious step forward. "You don't understand," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I was made for one purpose. To fight, to destroy. That's what I am. That's all I am. But when I look at you," her voice faltered, "I feel something I've never felt before. Something I can't explain." Eli didn't say anything. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond to that. His heart was heavy with the understanding that Lyra was carrying a burden far greater than he could comprehend. "I don't want to be alone anymore," Lyra continued, her voice quiet. "I've spent so long thinking that if I could just stay hidden, if I could just stay out of sight, I would be safe. But the truth is, I don't want to be hidden anymore. I don't want to keep running from what I am." Eli's heart ached. For her, he couldn't imagine the pain she must have felt, isolated from everyone, from her own kind. He knew what it was like to feel alone, but this was something else entirely. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You don't have to be alone," he said softly. "You don't have to carry this burden by yourself." Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable, but there was something in her eyes that made him believe she was starting to see the truth of his words. She reached out, her hand shaking slightly, and for the first time, she didn't pull away when Eli extended his hand to hers. "I'm not afraid of you, Lyra," he said, gently taking her hand in his. "I'm not afraid of what you think you are. I just want to know who you really are." The air between them shifted again. Lyra's hand felt cold in his, but there was something else, too, something warm. For the first time, she allowed herself to look at him not as a threat, but as something else. "Something more? I don't know if I can change," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can ever be the person you think I am." Eli looked at her, his expression soft but determined. "You don't have to change for me. You just have to be yourself." For the first time, a small smile tugged at Lyra's lips. It was fleeting, but it was there. And Eli felt a flicker of hope, not just for her, but for himself too. Perhaps they weren't so different. After all, days passed, and Eli and Lyra's strange connection began to grow. What had started as an encounter born from curiosity had turned into something more. They spent more time together, exploring the vast planet, learning about each other. Continued to fix his damaged ship, working late into the night with the hope that he could leave the planet and return to Earth. But the thought of leaving Lyra behind had started to feel more difficult. Lyra, on the other hand, had begun to change. Too, she found herself drawn to Eli more than she had ever imagined. At first, she believed it was simply a moment of weakness, a fleeting connection. But as the days wore on, she realized that it was something deeper. Eli's kindness and lack of fear were unlike anything she had ever known. He saw her not as a monster, but as a being with worth and potential. He didn't view her past as a burden, but as a part of who she was. This was something she had never allowed herself to believe. They would often sit together on the rocky outcrops, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. Eli would tell her stories about Earth, about his family, his home, and the simple pleasures of life that he missed. Lyra, in turn, would share her memories, though they were few and filled with pain. We speak of her past, of how she was abandoned by her own people, left to wander a desolate world where she had no place. "What was it like?" Eli asked one evening, as they sat beneath the moons, the cool wind brushing past them. "Before everything changed for you, what was your life like?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes distant as she searched the dark sky. "It was simple, I think," she said quietly. "I was part of a proud race once, lived among the stars, exploring new worlds, learning from others. I was young then, and everything seemed possible. But then they changed us. I was one of the last experiments they made. My people thought I was too dangerous, too uncontrollable." She stopped, shaking her head. "And so they cast me aside. It's left me to rot on a planet like this, alone." Eli could hear the sadness in her voice, and he reached out to her. "You're not alone now, Lyra," he said gently. "You have me. Always had me." Lyra looked at him, and for a moment the weight of his words seemed to hang in the air between them. She had never allowed herself to believe that anyone could care about her, not after everything that had happened. But here was Eli offering her his presence, his care, without asking for anything in return. "I don't know what to do with all of this," Lyra admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I don't know how to be someone who isn't afraid anymore." "You don't have to be anything but yourself," Eli said, smiling warmly. "You're enough, just as you are." Her heart fluttered in her chest, and for the first time in years, she felt something close to hope. She had always believed she was destined for nothing but isolation, to live the rest of her life hiding from the world. But with Eli, it was different. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was beginning to live again. As the days passed, their bond continued to grow. Eli worked on repairing his ship during the day, while Lyra helped him where she could, offering her strength and knowledge of the planet's terrain. In return, Eli would teach her about Earth, about human history, art, culture, things that were so foreign to her, but also strangely beautiful. One afternoon, as they ventured deeper into the barren landscape, they stumbled upon a strange glowing plant. It was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen, with petals that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the planet's twin moons. Eli crouched down to examine it, his face lighting up with wonder. "This is amazing," Eli said. "I've never seen anything like it. This could be a new species, something no one else has discovered." Lyra knelt beside him, her sharp eyes studying the plant. "It's rare," she said softly. "Only grows in certain areas. It's dangerous, though. Can kill if handled carelessly." Eli looked at her, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution. "Then why is it here?" Lyra shrugged. "Because life is unpredictable. It can bring beauty and danger in the same breath." Eli nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. He felt that way too, like his life had been full of unexpected twists and turns. Meeting Lyra, getting stranded on this alien planet, it was all so unpredictable, but in some strange way it felt right. He didn't know if he would ever get back to Earth, but he had begun to wonder if it even mattered as night fell. Eli and Lyra returned to their camp, the stars twinkling above them. Lyra looked up at the sky, lost in thought. She had come to realize that her feelings for Eli were stronger than she had expected. She had told herself that he was just another human, another being who would leave her behind when the time came. But now, she wasn't so sure. Eli had become more than just a companion. He was a source of warmth, of hope, in a world that had always been cold. "You've changed me, Lyra said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I never thought I would let anyone in. But you've made me feel like I could be something more than just a weapon, something more than just a monster." Eli turned to her, his expression gentle. "You've always been more than that, Lyra. You just had to see it for yourself." Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with emotions she didn't fully understand. She had spent so many years believing she was a monster, that there was no place for her in the universe. But now, with Eli by her side, she felt a glimmer of something new, a sense of belonging. "I don't know what the future holds," Lyra said, her voice shaky but strong. "Right. But I know that for the first time, I don't want to be alone." Eli smiled at her, his eyes warm with understanding. "You don't have to be, not anymore." The bond between Eli and Lyra had grown deeper than either of them had imagined. It was no longer just about survival, it was about something more. They had found something in each other that neither had expected. And no matter what happened next, they would face it together. The days seemed to blur together as Eli and Lyra spent more time together on Zeltra 5. They worked side by side, each day building their bond a little more. Eli had started to repair his ship, though the process was slow and he had no idea how long it would take before he could leave. Still, every moment he spent on this barren planet with Lyra made him feel strangely at peace. Lyra, on the other hand, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of connection. She had always kept herself hidden, away from the world. But Eli had changed that. He didn't see her as a monster. He saw her as someone worthy of companionship. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't alone. It was late in the evening when things took an unexpected turn. Eli had been working on his ship for hours, trying to fix the broken engine with the limited tools at his disposal. Lyra was nearby, quietly observing, her glowing eyes watching him with an unreadable expression. They were both focused on the task at hand when the ground suddenly trembled beneath their feet. Eli stopped, looking up in confusion. "What was that?" he asked, his voice filled with alarm. Lyra's eyes narrowed, her body tensing. "Something's coming." Before Eli could ask her what she meant, a loud roar echoed across the landscape. It was a deep, guttural sound, unlike anything he had heard before. The ground shook again, more violently this time, and Eli stumbled as he tried to regain his balance. "Lyra," he called out, fear creeping into his voice. "What's going on?" The alien woman didn't answer right away. She was already moving, her sharp senses alert to whatever was coming their way. Without a word, she motioned for Eli to follow her. As she sprinted toward the nearby cliffs, Eli didn't hesitate. He followed her, his heart pounding in his chest. They ran together through the rocky terrain, the roar growing louder and closer with each passing second. "What is it?" Eli gasped, trying to keep up with Lyra's swift pace. "What's out there?" "A predator," she said, her voice sharp. "One of the deadliest creatures on this planet." Eli's mind raced. The alien creatures he had encountered on Zeltra 5 had been strange and intimidating, but nothing like this. He could hear the pounding of heavy footsteps behind them, each one echoing like thunder. Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her eyes filled with a rare urgency. "It's faster than you think. We need to move." They rounded a bend in the rocks and came to a sharp incline. The cliffs rose high above them, offering some protection. Lyra, moving with the grace of someone who had spent her life running from danger, led them upward. Eli, though not as fast, followed closely behind. His heart was racing not just from the physical exertion, but from the fear of the unknown. As they reached the top of the incline, Lyra suddenly stopped. Eli almost bumped into her, barely managing to stop in time. "What is it?" he asked, panting for breath. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She was staring into the distance, her eyes narrowed. In the twilight, Eli could make out the shape of a massive creature moving through the rocky terrain. It was covered in thick, dark fur, its eyes glowing an eerie yellow. Its claws scraped against the rocks as it moved, searching for prey. "That's it," Lyra said quietly. "The Zeller. A creature that can tear through anything in its path." Eli's blood ran cold. The creature looked terrifying. It was much larger than any animal he had ever seen, its body rippling with muscle and its sharp teeth gleaming in the dim light. "We need to get out of here," Eli said, his voice shaking. "Can we outrun it?" Lyra shook her head. "Not unless you're as fast as I am, and you're not." Eli swallowed, his throat dry. He had never been good in situations like this. He was a scientist, an explorer, not a fighter. But there was one thing he knew for sure. He wasn't going to leave Lyra to face the creature alone. "We have to fight it," Eli said, his voice steady, despite the fear creeping in. "We can't outrun it, but we might be able to stop it." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You think you can fight that thing?" Her tone was almost mocking, though there was a hint of something else beneath it, something like respect. Eli didn't answer immediately. He knew he didn't have much to work with. But his mind was already racing, trying to come up with a plan. He remembered the tools in his pack, the scrap metal from the ship, and the small amount of explosives he had salvaged from the wreckage. It wasn't much, but it was something. "I don't have much," Eli said slowly, "but I think I can make a trap. We can lure it toward the rocks and use the environment to our advantage." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let's do it." Together, they quickly put their plan into motion. Lyra's sharp eyes and quick reflexes gave her the edge in setting the trap. While Eli worked to gather the necessary materials, he set the explosives near the edge of the cliff, carefully positioning the rocks in a way that would direct the creature toward the trap as they finished. Lyra turned to Eli, her eyes meeting his. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. There was a trace of doubt in her words, but also something else, something that almost felt like trust. Eli nodded. "You don't have a choice." They waited in silence, watching as the Zeller drew closer. The ground trembled with each step it took, its growls growing louder. Lyra's hand rested on the hilt of her blade, her posture tense. Eli gripped the detonator in his hand, his thumb resting lightly on the button. The creature emerged from the shadows, its glowing yellow eyes locking onto Eli and Lyra. It let out a roar, its fangs bared as it charged toward them. "Now, Eli!" shouted. Lyra sprang into action, moving faster than Eli could follow. She dashed toward the edge of the cliff, drawing the Zeller closer to the trap. Eli hesitated for only a moment before pressing the button. There was a deafening explosion, followed by the sound of rocks tumbling down the cliffside. The trap worked. The Zeller was thrown off balance, stumbling as the rocks collapsed around it. The creature roared in pain and fury, but it was trapped. Eli and Lyra stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, both shaken by the close call. But Lyra didn't look at him with fear or anger. Instead, she looked at him with something else. Something Eli couldn't name. "You saved my life," she said, her voice quieter than before. Eli shrugged, trying to act casual. "We saved each other." Lyra looked at him, her red eyes softening for the first time since they had met. "You." "Eli." Eli smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Anytime, Lyra, anytime." The days after the battle with the Zeller passed quickly, and with each passing day, Eli and Lyra grew closer. They continued to work on the ship together, and while the task was slow, it kept them busy. The planet Zeltra 5 remained cold and silent, but there was a growing warmth between the two of them. Despite the danger they had faced, something in Lyra had shifted, and she was no longer the creature hiding in the shadows. She was becoming someone Eli could count on, someone who, in her own way, had come to care for him. But Lyra still couldn't shake the doubt that lingered deep within her. She had been abandoned by her own kind, left to face the world alone. She had learned to survive through pain and fear. But Eli was different. His kindness, his unwavering belief that she was more than a monster, made her wonder if she could ever truly accept herself the way he did. One evening, as they sat near the wreckage of the ship, Lyra broke the silence. She had been quiet for hours, her sharp eyes staring out at the horizon. "Eli," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up from the tools he had been working with, sensing the seriousness in her tone.
What's on your mind?"
he asked, setting down the metal part he had been holding. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice hesitant, "about everything you've said to me, about who I am." Eli watched her carefully, noticing the unease in her posture. Lyra wasn't one to show vulnerability. It made him realize how much this conversation meant to her. "I know I've said that you're not a monster," Eli said softly, his voice reassuring. "And I meant it. But if you ever want to talk about anything at all, I'm here." Lyra looked at him, her glowing red eyes searching his face. She was silent for a long time before she spoke again, her words coming slowly, as though she were trying to find the right way to express herself. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confessed, her voice tinged with sorrow. "For so long I've been hiding from everything, from everyone. I thought I was nothing more than what they made me, a weapon, a tool for destruction. And then I ended up here, alone, on a planet where no one cares. But now that you're here, I don't know what I'm supposed to be." Eli felt a pang of sympathy in his chest. He'd always admired Lyra's strength, her resilience. But now he saw the weight of her past, the pain she carried with her. It wasn't just the physical scars from her battles, but the emotional. Scars that ran deeper than anything he could see. "You're not just a weapon, Lyra," he said gently. "You're a person, someone with feelings, with a past that shaped you. Yes, but it doesn't define who you are. I know you've been through a lot. Can't imagine what it's like to carry the things you've been through. But I do know that you're more than your past." Lyra's eyes softened as she listened to him. She'd heard words like these before, but for some reason, they felt different coming from Eli. His words weren't just empty comfort. He truly believed in her. I don't know if I can ever believe that, she said quietly, her gaze turning to the ground. I've been alone for so long that I've forgotten what it's like to trust anyone. I've forgotten what it's like to feel like I belong somewhere. Eli didn't know how to respond at first. He understood what she meant, even though he couldn't fully grasp the depth of her isolation. But he knew one thing for sure. Lyra deserved to believe in herself again. You're not alone anymore, he said softly, his voice full of sincerity. I'm here, and I believe in you, Lyra, no matter what. There was a long pause as Lyra absorbed his words. She didn't speak immediately, but Eli could see her thinking, wrestling with her own emotions. Slowly, she looked up at him, her red eyes filled with something she hadn't shown before, vulnerability. I've never let anyone get close, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Not since I was abandoned. I didn't think I was worth the effort, but now I'm starting to wonder. Maybe I don't have to hide anymore. Maybe I can be more than just a monster. Eli smiled softly. You can be whoever you want to be. It's not about what others see you as. It's about who you want to become. Lyra's eyes flickered with something akin to hope, and for the first time, she felt a small spark inside her, something that had been buried for so long. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she realized that, for the first time in her life, she didn't have to face it alone. As the days passed, the work on the ship continued. The broken-down engine had been nearly repaired, and the ship was starting to look more like something that could actually fly. Eli's skills as an engineer, combined with Lyra's knowledge of the planet, allowed them to make steady progress. And as they worked together, they spent more time talking, sharing stories, dreams, and fears. One afternoon, as they sat together near the ship, Lyra spoke again, her voice thoughtful. You know, she began, I've always wondered what it would be like to go back to my people, to the stars. But now I'm not sure if I ever want to return to that life. Eli looked at her, his expression curious. What do you mean? Lyra looked out across the desolate landscape, her eyes distant. I thought I needed to return, to prove that I wasn't just a weapon. But I've realized that the stars aren't the only place where you can belong. I'm starting to believe that maybe home is where you feel like you're truly seen. And here with you, I feel like I'm finally starting to see myself. Eli didn't speak right away. He didn't know what to say. But he knew one thing for sure. Lyra had come a long way from the creature who had first appeared in the shadows. She had begun to trust him, and that trust was something he would never take for granted. I'm glad you're here with me, he said, his voice quiet but full of meaning. Lyra turned to him, her expression softening. I'm glad too. In that moment, Eli realized that no matter what happened next, their bond would be something that neither of them could ever take for granted. They were no longer strangers, no longer alone. They had found something in each other that neither had expected, and it was something worth holding on to. The days on Zeltra 5 were growing shorter. Eli had finally managed to repair the ship to the point where it could be powered on, but there was still more work to do before it would be ready to leave. Every day, the two of them worked together, in silence, sharing occasional glances, and talking when the mood struck. But neither of them had brought up what had happened between them. What Lyra had begun to feel. It wasn't that Eli didn't feel the same way he did, but every time he tried to speak his feelings aloud, something held him back. He could see the way Lyra had changed since their time together. She had softened. Her sharp edges had dulled just a little. And there was something more human about her now, though she would never fully see herself that way. One evening, as the twin moons hung low in the sky, painting the landscape in a soft, silvery light, Eli decided it was time to talk. He had worked on the ship all day, his mind filled with thoughts of what would come next. He had thought about leaving many times, but each time he did, the thought of Lyra stopped him. What would happen to her when he was gone? Eli sat on a large rock near the ship, staring out into the vast, empty landscape. Lyra was sitting nearby, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. She had been quiet for the past few hours, lost in her thoughts. Eli had noticed that she seemed different lately, more distant. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was on her mind, something she wasn't telling him. "Lyra," he said softly, breaking the silence. She turned to him, her glowing red eyes meeting his. Double quotes, "Yes." Her voice was calm, but there was something uncertain in her tone. Eli hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. He had never been great with words, especially when it came to matters of the heart. But something in him, something deep inside, knew it was time to be honest. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Eli began, his voice steady. "About you." "About us?" Lyra's eyes widened slightly and she straightened, her body tense. "What do you mean?" "Shh," asked her voice low. Eli took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "I know things haven't been easy for you. You've been through a lot. But in the time I've spent with you, I've come to realize something. I don't just want to leave. I don't just want to go back to Earth and forget about everything that's happened here. Because what we've built together, what we've shared matters to me." Lyra stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Eli, I don't know what you're trying to say." "I'm saying that I care about you, Lyra," Eli said, his voice more confident now. "I care about you more than I ever thought I would. And it's not just about being stuck here on this planet. It's about what you mean to me, what we mean to each other." There was a long pause as Lyra processed his words. And for a moment, she thought she might turn away again. But she didn't. Instead, she stood up and walked closer to him, her steps slow and deliberate. She was close enough now for Eli to see the confusion in her eyes. "I don't understand," Lyra admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "You've seen what I am. You've seen the scars I carry, the things I've done. How can you say you care about me?" Eli looked at her, his expression soft but firm. "I care about you because of those things, not despite them. You're more than the pain you've gone through, Lyra. You're more than what you think you are." Lyra's chest tightened at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not since the day she had been abandoned. She had spent so many years believing she was a monster, a thing to be feared. And now, here was this human, offering her something she had long ago given up on. Kindness, understanding, and acceptance. "I don't know if I can believe that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've spent so long believing that I was a mistake, that I was never meant for anything good." Eli reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You're not a mistake, Lyra, and you don't have to believe in it right away. Not asking. You too change overnight. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Lyra looked at their joined hands, the warmth of his touch spreading through her. She had never allowed anyone to get close to her before, never. Allowed herself to care about someone. But Eli was different. He had shown her kindness when she thought she didn't deserve it. He had shown her that she wasn't alone. "I don't know what the future holds," Lyra said softly, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know if I'm capable of being the person you think I am." Eli smiled, a soft, reassuring smile that made Lyra's heart flutter. "It doesn't matter who you think you are. What matters is who you want to be. And I think you're stronger than you realize." Tears welled up in Lyra's eyes, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel something that she had long since buried: hope. A small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could let go of the past and find something new, something real. "I'm scared, Eli," Lyra admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm scared of what I could become, of what I could feel." Eli squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay to be scared," he said. "But you don't have to face it alone. You have me." For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind and the distant hum of the ship's systems. Lyra looked at Eli, her heart beating faster, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could finally let go of the darkness that had consumed her for so long. "Maybe," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible, "maybe I could learn to believe that." Eli leaned in slightly, his eyes soft and sincere. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be right here." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she let it fall, allowing herself to feel everything she had been too afraid to feel before. Hope, fear, Love, everything that she had kept locked. Away for so long, I don't know what's ahead of us, she whispered, but I think I'm ready to find out. Eli smiled warmly, his heart full. So am I, Lyra. So am I.